The U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to expand the presence of National Guard troops in cities around the country following the deployment of soldiers in Washington, D.C. The president has taken aim at several Democrat-led cities, including New York, Chicago, and Baltimore. Kristin Kanthak is an associate professor of political science at the University of Pittsburgh, and she joins me now. Kristin, good to have you back on the program. Now, Donald Trump, he wants to send in more National Guard troops and federal agents to police those cities, Chicago, Baltimore, New York. What are the chances of that happening in the wake of those deployments we saw in Washington?
Well, it's difficult to say. As we know, Donald Trump says a lot of things, and often we don't see the actual follow through. And it's also really important to note that from a legal perspective, it's very different to deploy these troops in Washington, D.C. than it is in a U.S. state. Washington, D.C. is not a state within our federal system and has very different rights in terms of how our Constitution is written. So it would be a very different story to do what he's doing in D.C. and say New York or Chicago.
So what are the sort of levers that the governors of those states or mayors of those cities have to resist the deployment of those troops should Donald Trump order that to happen?
Well, the big one is in the courts, and we saw that happen over the summer when Trump sent federal troops to Los Angeles, and the mayor fought back. The governor took him to court. That case is still pending, although the troops have now left the Los Angeles area. So the courts are really the big one, and honestly, it's not clear there's a path, a constitutional path whereby Trump can actually do this outside of Washington, D.C.
In the case of Washington, though, the president said that the city was plagued by crime, bloodshed. What do the facts tell us?
So the facts don't really bear that out. There are, like any city, anywhere in the world, there's crime in Washington, D.C. It's largely been gone down over the past several years. And the other sort of interesting thing is that where we're seeing those troops actually being deployed are not in the high crime areas, but rather in the high tourist areas where you actually don't see very much crime, particularly violent crime.
So is this a show of aggression then by the president to perhaps target Democratic states and cities, bearing in mind that the midterms are coming up next year?
So it could be. It could also be part of what we're seeing out of the Trump administration as a real attempt to change the relationship between the president and our political system in general. We're a system of checks and balances, which means that the U.S. president is quite limited in many ways in terms of what he can do. And Donald Trump has, particularly in this second term, worked really hard to see where those limits are, to try to figure them out.
Yes, Kristin, let's go to other matters. And speaking of checks and balances, we saw that the president fired the Federal Reserve Governor, Lisa Cook. Was this yet another political decision, given his quite public disdain for the bank's leadership, not least of which the chair, Jerome Powell?
I think it's pretty clear that's what it's related to. The Fed, our national bank, is supposed to be independent, and that's clear. That's how it's supposed to work, in the sense that for this very reason, so that the president of the United States can't apply pressure to the Fed to do things with interest rates that might help their short-term political cause. Donald Trump would like to see interest rates lower. The Fed has pushed back against that because of inflation, and this is his attempt to, again, see how much power he can wield as president.
Yes, Kristin, we woke up earlier this morning to news that our postal services announced they're stopping parcel deliveries to the U.S. because of these incoming tariffs. Other countries have done the same. How damaging will this be for businesses both domestically and internationally?
So this is going to be really interesting because I can say the coverage of this so far in the US has been pretty sparse. And that's partly because, what is going on in all of these other areas, some of which we're talking about here. So we're now just waking up to the US's first day where we can't get parcels from Australia or some or other countries. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see what the political fallout of that is, because so far we haven't seen a lot of very clear effects of Trump's tariff policies. So prices on things have gone up, but it's not particularly clear and obvious, at least partly because Donald Trump has made it clear he would be very much against companies adding a line item to the bill for the Trump tariff. Um, we, as sort of your typical American spender, hasn't seen a whole lot of effects of that. Like clearly, there's the tariff. This is going to be one of them. So it'll be really interesting to see how that has a big effect.
Yes, and Kristin, lots happening in the White House, not least the visit by South Korea's new president, Lee Jae-myung. But it was North Korea that dominated the headlines. So how likely is it that there might be another summit with Kim Jong-un?
I think it would be quite likely. I think Donald Trump has and his spokespeople have made it no secret that he wants a Nobel Peace Prize, and he is campaigning and working hard to get one. And he has a clear sense that a big win somewhere would be how that would happen. It's been a bad week for him, for all of us really, in terms of Russia, Ukraine. And so he may well be setting his sights on North and South Korea as a way to bring peace to the world in his push for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Okay, whether he wins or not, we don't know, but there probably will be a nomination. Kristin Kanthak, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.